Hello again, and welcome to another episode of Pushing 60 Aside with me, your host, Gene Fleming. So glad you chose to spend a few minutes of your day with me discussing the things that matter to those of us over 60, maybe over 65, maybe over 70, maybe over 80. The goal is getting there. And tonight I wanted to talk about things that might would stop us from getting there. What would I know about fitness and seniors and aging and the diseases of aging? Well, unfortunately, I'm starting to experience some of the conditions of aging because I didn't have to wear glasses for the longest time. And then I began to realize I couldn't read the ingredient labels on food products I'd buy. The fine print had gotten ultra fine and ultra blurry to me. But tonight, I want to entitle this podcast, And the Truth Is. Because, you just can't go wrong with the truth. Uh, Something that I have told my kids when I was raising them is if you'll always just tell the truth, then you don't have to remember the lie that you told some point in the future. And, for years, all of us who've grown up through the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s, and into adulthood, and now we're either approaching retirement age or maybe we're already retired, like moi. And, for the longest time, they told us a lie. They told us that fat in our diet made us fat. We now know that's not true. It's not true at all. It's a big old lie, and it was funded by the sugar industry. Imagine that. And so for the longest time, we thought we were doing ourselves great favors by shopping and buying products that said fat free. Well, how did they make those Oreos so delicious without any fat at all? They just gave us more sugar and we bought it lock, stock, and barrel. And then they made products like Snackwells. This is a snack that only gives you 100 calories. And boys and girls, isn't that a great idea? Well, maybe if it wasn't 100 calories of sugar, and no other nutritional value whatsoever. So is it a healthy snack? No, it's not. But tonight, the truth is, the truth is that in years past, I did pastoral work and chaplaincy work. And because of that position, I was often called upon to conduct the eulogies or at least to co-conduct funeral services for people who had passed. Now that's really sad, and that's a lousy way to start off a podcast or a YouTube video. And by the way, I am recording in both formats right now, so if I say podcast or I say YouTube, it's all the same thing. Just me gab, 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 gab. You got to have a sense of humor about yourself as you age. That's important. But let's go back to the subject of some of the funerals that I conducted back in the 90s and the early 2000s. And eventually I kind of burn out on that kind of work because it's very emotionally draining and very demanding. And so I would get calls late at night, maybe from a nursing home or an assisted living facility that I was their chaplain, and they'd say, can you come? Miss Jones is nearing the end of her life, and there's nobody here with her. There's nobody here with her. And I would know who Mrs. Jones was and had been expecting it perhaps for a month, maybe 6 months, because she was extremely old. She was 85. She was getting frail. She'd lost most of her muscle mass. She wasn't eating well. And maybe she had a little heart disease, maybe some other things, who knows. But anyway, come quick, Mrs. Jones will probably pass tonight. And if you don't come, there'll be nobody to be with her other than our staff at the time that she transitions to the afterlife. Well, of course, my heartstrings are plucked. I put on a tie and my suit coat, and I drive maybe 20 miles to that location, and I sit the whole night with Mrs. Jones until she passes. I talk to her as if she is wide awake and that it's just another visit between her and me, because that's what chaplains do. And, I even had prayer with her. Could she hear me? More than likely not. But, if she could, maybe she was comforted by it. But let me tell you about Mrs. Jones. Mrs. Jones, soaking wet, probably weighed 98 to 105 pounds. She was about 88 years old and had lived a rich, full life. She'd been a school teacher and, and had been retired for a long time. She had raised kids. She had been married. She had outlived everyone. But the one thing that Miss Jones had going for her that helped her get to the ripe old age of 88 was Mrs. Jones was not obese. All any other complications that Mrs. Jones had, she did not have obesity. And the truth of the matter is, there we go. The truth is, during all those days of doing pastoral work, doing chaplaincy work, and conducting funerals, I never buried a person, man or woman, who was in their 80s that was very obese. Not one. Not one. I did, however, conduct the services for a lot of people that were in their 80s and older, who were people who were not morbidly obese, not obese. They were just old and worn out, and they passed, as we say, of natural causes. But how did the question I have is, how did they get to 80 plus? How did they get to 90 plus? I did the funeral for my own grandfather. How did he get to his age of 92, 93, whatever it was at the time? Nobody knows for sure. But how did he get that old? Well, he worked hard. He never quit being active, even in his 80s. He stayed socially engaged. You've heard all this stuff on the podcast before. And he ate a lot of fresh food. Oh my gosh. He, he didn't want his beans from a can. He wanted them from his garden. And so all those years, all his life, he had eaten a lot of fresh farm food, usually that he grew himself or bartered with another farmer for, if one guy's got tomatoes and another guy's got corn, let's swap, that kind of thing. Because we're going back into the 1920s, 1930s, Depression era, World War II, times like that. My grandfather lived to be that old age because he took care of himself as best he could in his diet and in his physical activity. After my grandmother, his first wife, passed at age 64, my grandfather eventually remarried. There's some evidence that suggests that married people live longer. The truth is, married people do live longer. Oftentimes these days, I see that there's more surviving widows than there are widowers. And I don't really know why that is. I can't cite a statistic or some research that says why. But, most of the people in my classes are women, and many of them are widowed, widows. And so, they did something perhaps differently than their husbands. Maybe they didn't drink, and maybe they didn't smoke, and maybe they didn't take unnecessary risk in life. Maybe they ate better. Maybe they didn't eat the Vienna sausages. Maybe they just made a modest ham and cheese sandwich. But let's talk about getting to old age, and let's do it quickly, because that's what I want to do. I want to get to old age and be able to enjoy old age. I'm not quite there yet. I've got a few more years, I think, before I can say I'm an old person. So at age 65, here's some things that I know. About 41% of Americans right now, age 65 and older, are obese. that tells me that 41% has a reduced likelihood of living into their 80s and beyond. So, what do we need to do once we've turned 60, 65? Well, one of the truths is truths. That's a hard word to say. I don't even know it's a real word, but one of the hard truths to sell and to share is that the truth about us is since we quit doing the daily grind of work, labor, and we're way past raising kids, hopefully. Now, I know some of you are raising grandkids, things like that. But there was a lot of activity from the time we graduated high school until the time we exited the workforce. And so every day we had purpose. We had to get up, we had to go, we had to do whatever labor it was, whether it was at a desk or an assembly line or in construction or whatever it was that we did. We were busy all the time, just about at least 5 days a week. And so then we get to this magic period in life where we get to draw our retirement benefits, our Social Security, whatever our plan was, and then we don't have to work 5 days a week, at least 40 hours a week. We don't have to do that anymore. So what are we going to do with that 40 hours plus a week? Because, work is not just the 40 hours you spend for the company. It's the getting ready for work. It's the traveling to work. It's the coming home from work. It's doing chores at home after work. It's taking care of kids and pets and farm animals and yard and house and everything else. So you still have to do everything except the get ready for work, go to work and come home from work. We don't have to do that anymore. But when we take that 8, 9, 10 hours of activity out of our lives every day, we don't need to eat as much. And one of the things that hurts us is that we're still trying to eat after age 60 like we ate when we were 40 or 50. And when we were burning all those other calories and we were using those muscles on a regular basis, we're still trying to eat the same amounts of food and maybe more, because now we're retired. We're more apt to go out to eat and eat a high calorie, high salt, high sugar meal that just really stacks on the calories left and right in the course of one meal. You ever been to one of those steakhouses that brings you an endless supply of delicious rolls? I've been there. I love them. I don't go there anymore. And if I do, I say just keep the rolls, because I know me. And once I get one of those hot buttered rolls, they just melt in your mouth. There's 100 calories, there's 200 calories, there's 300 calories. And before long, I've eaten way more calories than I need for that day. Okay? So how many calories do we need as people, I'm just going to say 65 and older? Well, our basic metabolic rate, that is what it takes just for us to digest food, to breathe, for our heart and organs to work, for us to do little subtle things, whether it's poking on our phones or scrolling or whatever it is we do, little food prep and stuff. Our basic metabolic rate is that we burn about 70 calories an hour. I burn about 70 an hour. You burn about 70 an hour. When we're exercising, that rate goes way up. But we can't exercise 12 hours a day. That's unrealistic. And so is the thinking that I can eat 2 pieces of pecan pie or maybe lemon meringue and then go for a 2-hour walk and burn all those calories, because that's not the way it works. And oftentimes we do that kind of faulty thinking where we say, I'll go ahead and eat the ice cream and then I'll go for a walk this evening. And then the walk never comes. So we do that barter system, where we're saying, yeah, I know I don't need these calories and this sugar's not good for me. I'll just go walk it off later. And besides, I've got an exercise class I'm going to tomorrow. I'll burn these calories off then. Unfortunately, that's not the way it works, because once those easy carbs are in your body, talking sugar, once those easy carbs are in your body's got to do something with them. And the calories we get It doesn't matter what form they're in, our body has to do something with them. They've got to be processed by our liver, through our stomach, on into our intestines. The processing just keeps going. The body never stops working, and it's extracting the proteins it needs, the fats it needs, the salts it needs, everything that it needs. Your body's extracting from your food, and your body just doesn't need sugar. Not raw sugar, not cane sugar, not brown sugar, not confectioner sugar, not hydrogenated sugars, none of that stuff. Your body literally doesn't need that to function. No, you can get everything it needs to make glucose from just normal foods we eat, like vegetables and fruits. So, excuse me, if I eat more calories in a day than my body actually needs, and because of that 70 calorie an hour metabolic rate, pretty close to that. Some are a little lower, some are a little higher, but because of that 70 calorie an hour thing, I need about 1,500 calories a day just to run my body, just to run this body. Pump, breathe, digest, make pee, make poop, all of that. It takes some calories to do that. So if I exceed that metabolic rate with a bunch of extra calories, technically my body doesn't need those extra calories to stay alive. It just needed the first 1,500 for a 24-hour day. So your body has to decide what it's going to do with the extra calories that you've eaten during the course of a day. And days aren't linear. 24 hours happens, but all food inside that 24-hour cycle, from wake up time to wake up time, all those calories count in that 24-hour period. So sleeping's a good thing, because ideally we're not eating in our sleep, although I have been known to get up in the middle of the night and go get a snack, just being honest. So if I eat 3,000 calories a day, and the truth is a lot of Americans are eating 3,000 to 3,500 calories per day. Those calories come in the three basic states: fat, carbohydrates, and what's the other one? Proteins. So I could live on an all-fat diet. I could live on an all-carbohydrate diet. I could live on an all-protein diet. But optimally, I'm going to get a mixture of these three things to make up, first, that 1,500 calories that I need, that my body needs, because my body's working on skin and muscles and organ repair and all of those things, just nonstop. And so what if I eat more calories of any kind than I actually need during a day? Well, your body's got a couple of options there. What do you think it's going to do with the extra fat that you ingest? What if I told you it turned it eventually into glucose? Wait a minute, isn't that sugar? Yes, it is. What if you ate more protein than you could possibly use in a 24-hour day? What's your body going to do with that? It's going to turn it into glucose. Right on into your good old bloodstream. Now, what's it going to do with all those extra carbs that you didn't need? That's easy. That turns right to glucose right away. And now we've got all this sugar from all these sources that are in our bloodstream. Yeah, there's some nutritional value in some of the things we ate, in the protein, even in the fat, even in the carbs. There's some nutritional value there. There's vitamins, minerals, and phytonutrients and fuel to run our bodies. But if we've eaten too much fuel, the body's going to try to convert it to a usable form. Fat, as we eat it, is not readily a usable form for energy. The body has to convert that. And when it does, it's going to convert it. It's a process. We're not going to have a science class here, but it's a process where even fat that we ingest ends up turning into glucose, but it's a very, very slow process. However, eating the sugar in a Snickers bar or drinking the sugar in a Mountain Dew is right there. It's just right there. Quick glucose, and it quickly goes into your bloodstream to where you get a sugar high, a sugar rush, a quickly elevated blood glucose level. Well, your body has to decide what it's going to do with all that glucose now, and what do you think it's going to do with it? Well, let's turn the fat that turned into glucose back into fat and store it for later. Oh, that's a good idea, right? Well, what are we going to do with all this extra protein? Well, some of it may actually slip out through your bowels, not a whole lot. It's going to be turned into glucose, got the excess glucose, it's going to be converted into and stored as fat. It's got to be stored somewhere. It'll be stored in your breast. It'll be stored in your subcutaneous areas underneath your skin. It'll be stored in your buttocks, in your thighs, the back of your arms, around your neck. That glucose, that fat rather, can be stored in any place that you know are places where human beings store fat. So what is the point? What is the truth here, Gene? Well, the truth is we, especially, I can't speak for other countries, but I do know a little bit about some of them. We in America are eating way too many calories every day. And that's when we're 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years old. We've got an obesity epidemic. All right. And those of us who are seniors, if we want to live to a really ripe old age, we can't eat too many calories. And that's the truth. I'm going to pause this right now. And how about that? My little dog right back there in the back. He's going to help us just a bit because he's so precious. Yeah, he's my buddy. Banky bank. Banky bank. Son of a gun, it happens sometimes. But I'm going to try and not quit. I apologize for the little dog barking. He is a little dog, and he's still just 3 years old. He hasn't learned how to behave. Come here, buddy. Sometimes I just can't win. And now he's sitting like 3 rooms away in the den, and he's fussing right now because I'm not out there sitting on the sofa that's in that den. So let's get back to the truth. The truth is your body's got to do something with the calories. If you get too many calories, it's got no choice but to store them as fat. So we as seniors don't need as many calories as we once needed. I don't need them. You don't need them. Technical difficulties abound, and it's not just a little dog. Come here, Binks. All right, we're going to pick this right back up. I had to take a break on the podcast portion of this, and I can just only apologize for my little barking dog. Granted, the rest of the day, he has been absolutely precious. So the truth is, we seniors can't eat like we once did because we're not on the go like we once were. We're not burning the calories we once were. Our metabolism has dropped down some just because we got older. And I know that's not fair, but just because we got older, we don't burn calories like the inferno we used to be. We're no longer that calorie burning inferno we once were. And so even for us, part of aging is the natural propensity to carry extra fat, and to add a little bit more fat. But if we keep that in check by monitoring and moderating the amount of calories that we get every 24-hour period, and namely that we don't overeat and we don't ingest more calories than our bodies can possibly use, whatever form they come in, we just don't eat too much. And so how many calories does an average senior need per day? We need a minimum of 1,500 for metabolism. We just got to fuel the system. We want to get it in fats, carbs, and proteins. Right? That's basic. You know that by now. That's what we need. What I've got to make sure that when I'm filling my plate, I'm not overfilling my plate. An example of that happened just this evening. My wife fixed dinner for me, and she put a a grilled Angus patty on my plate with some gravy on it. That's okay. I said, I can't eat both of these patties. It's too much. It was too much food. So put it back. I'll save it as a leftover for another meal. But right now, me eating 2/3 of a pound of Angus burger is too much food. And my body can't process all that fat and protein in sufficient time to do anything with it else other than to convert it through the process to glucose and waste. So I reduce the size of my portions. That's one of the things that's helping me maintain my weight as I go forward. One thing I know is if I get obese again, especially if I get morbidly obese again, no amount of exercise, no amount of walking, no amount of weightlifting, no amount of chores and yard work and all of that is going to undo the damage I'm doing to my body by simply giving it too much food. Too much food. So I can't continue to eat like I did when I was 40 or maybe when I was 50. I've got to give my body, the truth is, I need to give my body enough fuel to be healthy. How about that? That's a good way to look at that. Enough fuel to be healthy. And not so much fuel in the form of food that it makes my body very unhealthy by pushing me up into the obesity zone or into the morbidly obese zone. The morbidly obese zone is carrying so much extra adipose tissue, fat on your body, that it reduces your lifespan. In other words, the obesity gives birth to disease. And whether it's diabetes or heart disease or any other organ disease, that's a killer. I can't call it anything else. Morbid obesity shortens your lifespan and results in you being of a compromised immune system. It results in you being more susceptible to these diseases like heart disease and kidney disease and liver disease. It just does. And the only way that we can get to that really, really senior year and do it well as aging people is by keeping our diet in check, knowing that we can't out-exercise a bad diet. That's just faulty thinking. So what can seniors do to help themselves get to the ripe old age? Well, like my granddad, eat more fresh foods, eat smaller portions, and exercise. The exercise is not going to undo the obesity issue, but it helps. And here's why. And this is the final truth before I close out this podcast. The final truth tonight is eating is something we all enjoy. I look forward to meal times. Exercise, we don't like it near as much as we do eating. But when a senior purposefully engages in regular exercise 3 to 5 days a week, at least 30 minutes a session, when that senior starts taking better care of their strength issues and their balance issues and their range of motion issues through a well-designed exercise program, a certain level of inspiration comes over them in their spirit and in their mind, because the thought processes are, I'm working really hard to stay strong and not lose my muscle mass and to be able to continue doing things I love to do as I age, well, why do all this exercise if I'm going to feed myself to death by eating too much food? Maybe, just maybe, I can make better choices, eat smaller portions, and realize that I really do have a ceiling on how many calories I can successfully handle as a human being in one 24-hour period. And for the max as us as seniors, it's about 2,200, 2,300 calories a day, unless you are very, very active. And I mean, like you're a long distance runner and maybe you're running 6, 8 hours a week, which is a lot of running. Very few of us, let's tell the truth now, very few of us are running 6 to 8 hours a week. And if you are, I salute you, my brother. You need more calories than I do, and I hope you get good ones. So tonight, as you think about your longevity and how the coming years are going to pan out for you, are you going to be sick all the time? Are you going to progressively go downhill at a steady rate to where before long you really can't do anything you want to do? You can't do much of the things you must do. You feel bad, you feel fatigued, you feel frustrated. How do we fight all that? I will tell you, my friends, exercise is not the answer to everything, but it's a good start. It's a good start because the only thing worse than overeating is inactivity. That's not rocket science. If we sit and do nothing, your body doesn't need to work on muscle. The body doesn't need to work on strength. And then you find yourself in that unfortunate situation where you have trouble getting in and out of bed. You have trouble standing up from the toilet. Maybe, and we talk about things like this in my exercise classes, maybe when the urge to go to the bathroom happens and you're seated in your favorite recliner, you can't get out of that recliner fast enough to keep from soiling yourself. Nobody wants to be in that position. So we have to think ahead. We have to think ahead. How am I going to make sure that I can take care of myself? How am I going to make sure that I'm able-bodied enough that I don't just keep getting heavier, keep getting weaker, keep getting sicker? What can I do? Exercise, smaller portions, healthy foods. It sounds so simple, doesn't it? And we sometimes think, well, I could do that. One of these days, I'm going to do that. One of these days, I'm going to quit going through the drive-through and picking up fast food. One of these days, I'm going to start cooking again. Oh, one of these days, I'm going to grow some food in my garden. But, the clock is ticking. And, part of the reason my grandfather lived to be 90 or so was because he didn't have any real choice. They were poor. He was poor all of his life. Hard scrabble life, that's what they call that, where growing a garden was part and a major part of what he ate. So eating fresh food was the only option because the money wasn't there to go to the supermarket and buy highly processed foods. Even his cakes that my grandmother and my step-grandmother made were made from scratch. There was no Betty Crocker, Duncan Hines cake mixes. They made all that stuff from scratch. Was it better? Probably. Did it still have a lot of sugar in it? Yeah, you betcha. Did it have a lot of fat or lard in it? It did. It did. But there was balance. My grandfather was not a person who snacked all day long. And nowhere is it written that we have to have 3 meals a day and 2 snacks. That that's one of those little white lies that has been told to us to encourage us to do somebody's diet. Oh, you can be on this diet, you get 3 meals a day and 2 snacks intermingled in there. 2 snacks. And we're like, oh, I don't have to starve all day long, so I'll do that diet. The truth is, we could probably eat most of our calories in 2 meals. I mean, the calories we need, we could eat all those in 2 meals a day. There's no law that says we have to eat breakfast, but we've grown up to believe that you got to have something from Kellogg's in the morning so you can do good in school. And that's not necessarily true. The power that I'm running off of today, I ate yesterday. So if I had a good supper last night, I can probably manage tomorrow morning without stuffing myself with waffles. So the truth is, aging is hard. The truth is, you only burn so many calories. The truth is, you're going to have a natural tendency to get a little heavier with fat as you age. The truth is, portion control really works. Limiting yourself to the calories you actually need as opposed to the calories you'd like to eat is a good idea. And how do we know? How do we know? If your pants start getting tight, it's time to cut back. You start getting winded really easy, it's time to cut back and exercise more. It's easy for me to say exercise more. That's really hard to do. But I hope that you will do that and that you will think every meal, is this too much food on my plate? Can I stop this bad habit of going back for seconds? Where is it written that I must have a dessert or a snack? Or is that just in here? Is it just because it tastes good? All of the above. On that note, I'm going to close out the YouTube, going to close out the podcast, and I'm going to wish you the best life because you're in the driver's seat of your life. I'm not there with you and telling you what to eat, when to exercise, how much to exercise. I'm not a doctor, but you're the person. You're the person who makes the decision about every morsel you put in your mouth, every drop that you drink and what those drops are. You're the person that has to want a really great senior life for yourself, for your family, for your spouse, more than anything else. It really has to be job one in your life going forward, or you get the booby prize. You get the zonk. You get the almost made it to 74, almost made it to 70, almost made it to 68, but you didn't take care of yourself. And that's the zonk. That's the zonk. We can't readily fix what we've done to ourselves with shots, with surgeries, with psychotherapy. We really have to take care of ourselves here, and here, and right here, baby, right here in the gun show. Until next podcast, may the good Lord bless you.